Yeah, now stand and cheer for your Talking Basketball podcast. Welcome back to this episode. This is the second part of a doubleheader. If you haven't heard the first, go back and listen to it. If you can't be bothered, that's all right. Just keep listening to this one, and hopefully you enjoy it. And don't forget, like and subscribe. I hate it when people say that.
So what are those differences then that you were talking about between, say like a BBL, and then if they're playing a game in Euro Cup or EuroLeague? What are those sort of subtleties that you're looking for?
So there's just small nuanced differences in EuroLeague have slightly tweaked the rules from time to time. So things like there's a jump ball in EuroLeague, Euro Cup, which they don't have in FIBA games. A really random one is if you win the tip off into the front court, you get 24 seconds in EuroLeague, Euro Cup. Or if it tips out of bounds into the front court, you get 24 seconds, whereas under FIBA rules, you only get 14. There's a few things about the no charge circle that are slightly nuancedly different between FIBA rules and EuroLeague, Euro Cup. But broadly, it's not like the NBA where the rules are quite blatantly different and they have different calls and different names. But there are some small differences between EuroLeague and everything else.
So the Dan Routledge magical wand that could wave it across and say, this is how, not I view basketball, but this is what I say, the country or the league that I think gets it right in terms of basketball as a product, as a sport, as a delivery, as a package. Where would you think that would be? What do you think would be like the blueprint that maybe places like the UK or other countries that are still trying to zhuzh it up? Because you've had exposure across the various things.
My argument for as long as I can remember has always been about facilities. We've touched on it already here today. Is the answer to all your problems is facilities and availability at reasonable cost, and that's reasonable cost both in terms of participation, and by participation I don't just mean old guys like me running up and down the court. I mean my kids having the opportunity to get proper training and the potential to use it for whatever they use it in life, whether that's they go on become a professional basketball player or the education that they've got alongside the basketball gets them a different type of job, all of that sort of good stuff, and getting kids active, etc., and also in terms of teams having control over when they play, where they play, and generating the income themselves, rather than paying thousands of pounds every game night to somebody else who gets all of the money. And therein has been the problem of British basketball since forever, and it's becoming less of a problem now because we have Leicester and Newcastle and Sheffield and Caledonia owning their own venues and being in control of that. And if I had tens of millions of pounds to invest in British basketball, the way I get a long-term return would be to take the blueprint of the Virtue Motors Arena, of the Cannon Medical Arena, of the Mattioli Arena, and build another 8 to 10 of them, so that I've got 16 cities with a venue like that, and a team in charge of it. And in 25 years' time, that will be seen as the best investment in the history of the sport. And nobody's ever really done that other than those clubs who have somehow, some way found a way of doing it themselves without really any other support. And that's always been my thing, is if you build it, they will come. It is about venues. And going back to rugby union generates a huge amount of income on Monday to Friday in their stadia, where they have stadia. Welford Road is two miles down the road from me here. If I drive past that now, there'll be some corporate event going on in the function rooms upstairs, or if there's not now, it would have been earlier in the day, etc., because they're able to generate income during the week, and those are things that people have never been able to do with basketball. And I go back to the lines as an example, as it becomes very easy not to do basketball, and it's still going to be a balance going forward. But I think if I could spend £100 million, that's where I would spend it, and I'd know I would never really see the return on investment
in your lifetime,
or ever potentially, or personally, but I would feel good about it. I would know I'd done some good.
We are all praying to the basketball gods now that Dan wins the Euro Millions.
I mean, can be honest,
I didn't say I would spend my 100 million on it.
I'd actually prefer.
We got you on record.
I'd prefer if I won it, and then I'll just use Dan's idea, but I'd still like to win that. Yeah, like.
Sorry, Dan. Just in case you do win the Euro Million, just to let you know, Portsmouth did have, a huge successful club down here back in the 80s. So just maybe have that one on your list
pop
as
that
well.
On the list. For sure, in Southern team.
Just they're above Solent Kestrels.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
But that, that's one of the reasons we started podcasts, is because we loved it, and that was in our heyday when we were kids, and we'd go, and then this team got just grenaded. So I say we segue quite nicely into that's happened quite a lot with the finances in teams in basketball. Especially in the UK, I'm not as familiar with. I know other teams in other countries have similar financial implications, but a lot of them, I want to say the venues don't tend to be the issue. Obviously, in the UK, we have the issue of venues as a start because it's a big one. But why is it such a struggle in the UK with that?
Well, I think over the years there have been people, and going back to they've
had some big sponsors, haven't they?
If you go back to the late 80s, when you're talking about there, it was football teams dabbling in it, and then in the 90s it was entertainment people dabbling in it, and everybody always thinks they've got the solution, and everybody's been doing it wrong before then. You lot have just not tried this and that and the other, and then they make the same mistakes that the last person made, and invariably the people who came in like that came in because they're trying to make some money out of it, as opposed to the people who've been in it for a long time, who are in it for the love of the sport and want the sport to continue. And the problem is, even millionaires, when they're losing millions, eventually go, well, hang on a minute, this doesn't make any sense, we need to stop doing this. And invariably, because the clubs have spent so much money, it becomes nigh on impossible without some other millionaire coming in to burn their millions to keep it going. So you look back to the Manchester Giants, the late 90s, when they spent more money than anybody else, and then the owners decided they didn't want to do that anymore, so they pulled out, and they limped on for a little bit, but it was unsustainable because of the expectation and everything around that. So I think the reality is that you've had people coming in trying to throw money at it in the hope that would solve the mythical problem. And actually, I think Newcastle is probably the most interesting example, because obviously Sunderland went up and went down, bounced about, spent a load of money, Steve Bucknell and co in 1991-2, ran out of money, went back to Ken Nottage and Colin Kirkham and the likes for a season, and were bottom of the table. Then John Hall came in with his great, we're going to make Barcelona of the North, and bought up the rugby club and the ice hockey club and the basketball club, and threw millions at it, realized it was a big waste of money, and I think he sold it to Paul Blake for £1, did he? Something like that.
He did, and he paid off the debt of the club as well before he did it. So that's what he did.
So, but then what did Paul do with it? Paul and Sam, what they did was they went, well, actually, we're going to build it from the ground up. We're going to build our youth development programs, and we're going to build it that way. And 20 years later, they're the most successful club in the history of British basketball. They've got, I would imagine, the biggest crowd base of anybody. It's always full up there. And every time, if you go like I do, and you turn up 4 hours before the game, there's Hoops for Health, Gateshead Hoops for Health, Washington Hoops for Health, whatever, and because they've got such a huge population of kids playing basketball, which A, is the potential to be the next Tozan, B, more importantly in the short term, they come with their mum and their dad and their granny, who've all bought a ticket, by the way, for the game, so they fill the crowd as well. So I mean, it's a virtuous circle, and to me, that is the solution, rather than just throw loads of money at it. And you know, probably the London City Royals was the opposite end of the example, which was, we're just going to sign the most expensive, best British players we can find, and people will come and watch it because, you know, it's Ashley Hamilton and Matthew Bryan and Manning. Why wouldn't they? Well, that's great for people like me who want to come and watch them, but actually they didn't build the audience first to be able to sustain it for a long period of time. And therein is the challenge.
And that's the exact word, sustainability. And when we had Paul Blake on the podcast, that's the one word for me that stood financial stability, to make it successful.
And they're looking at like, can we take the wall out now? And can we make it bigger? Because they're now got so many people there, and they've got so many teams involved. Exactly. And they said, like, I think they had
space around there.
They had softball or something at one end, and he said, with that, and then we had the basketball court, and then we're thinking, if we knock it through there, we can go a bit. And so, you know, that's why when you then look at it, you think, so Manchester, for example, is quite a big facility, the National Basketball Centre, and the team has struggled, and with financial things and so forth, and you think, it seems to be, you know, that I've always looked at the UK basketball as a very fragmented situation, and there's lots of little groups of it, and everyone's trying to do their own thing, and it doesn't seem to be one uniform thing, does it?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily unique to basketball, though. I think that works in a lot of sports in this country.
Yes.
People go on about governance and whatever, and I sort of go, "Oh, we're pretty good in this country at bad governance, whatever the sport." the governing bodies are not. If you look at Olympic sport in particular, we've seen all the sorts of issues in recent years in various different sports. So even having the money wasn't necessarily the solution to all of the problems. But the other thing is, it's not easy. It's not easy, and it's a totally different. You go back to the Mountbatten days. It's a totally different market. This is the thing that people struggle to grasp. When I was a kid, you know, there wasn't really much you could do. The cinemas were pretty dank and dingy. Football was a place full of hooligans. It's certainly, like, I wouldn't take my kids to football now if football was like when I was a kid going to football. It's just we're a different generation. We just wouldn't do that anymore. There wasn't all of these out of town places, and, you know, even restaurants. There weren't as many restaurants and that, so there was a lot less pull on your disposable income, shall we say. And I think that was part of the boom of the 80s. And now the landscape is much more challenging. You know, people don't even have to leave their house. They can sit at home and watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. So it's a lot more challenging to get people to come out into into watching your product, whatever that product may be. And it isn't easy, which is why I say if you build it from the ground up rather than the top down. I just think top down has been proven time and time again not to work in this country.
Dan, you just mentioned the Olympics, and when we talk about international basketball, you were commentating for roughly 13 years, and then you got an opportunity to actually do commentating at an international level. That must have been a pretty good phone call you got to say, look, can you go over to Asia?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, really. The first one I did was the Asian Games in 2006 in Doha, and my son had just been born, and I left my wife at home alone with a 6-7 month old, and went off. I think it was a full month, and I wouldn't say it was a place I'd necessarily go back to, but I had a great time while I was there. And to be fair, basketball has taken me to places that I would never dreamt of going to. I went to Wuhan before, I've been to Senegal, COVID Paralympics. Grateful to what basketball has given me, the opportunities and the people I've met around the world. Just for sitting and talking about basketball, which if they weren't paying me to do, I'd probably be sitting there talking about basketball on my sofa instead.
We got asked that actually though, but what's it like balancing like a family life and a basketball career where you are on the road a lot? Because I guess that's for the players.
Shall I just call my wife down and get her to answer that question for you? Yeah. I mean, it
must be a challenge.
Yeah, it's less so now because my kids are older, so they're less needy. But yeah, it used to drive my wife mad because all these events that I would go to were end of August, beginning of September, and she's a teacher, so that was the first week of term. And of course, teachers go in for the teacher days, so there's 2 days of the kids not being in school, where she's in school, and I'd be, in Istanbul going, oh, sorry, or in Senegal sending pictures. Oh God, it's so hot sat next to the pool here. So there, it wasn't without its challenges.
I'm really busy, love. Here's a picture of me by the pool.
Yeah.
But I got work in 4 hours.
Exactly. But we muddled through. I think having a really good wife is the answer to how you muddle it through.
I mean, it is a big thing to do, isn't it? With that travel, and especially as well when you're getting to see the different ways in which I won't say basketball's approached, but by the local cultures as well. Because then when you're bringing that back professionally, you're thinking, wow, they did this and they do that. And you're lucky enough to have what I would say I think is quite a unique perspective on it, because in the same way refs have a very unique perspective on the game. I want players, I won't say I can have a similar across the board. They all have their own versions of it, but it's similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
But where you're doing commentary, you are seeing it through a different lens. So
yeah, definitely, and just even just simple things like in Senegal, the fans were just unbelievable, like just going wild for a free throw in the first quarter, sort of thing, and actually getting that exposure. I remember when I went to Poland, the Macedonian fans just absolutely mad. They came with a massive flag that covered sort of a third of the seating in the venue or something, and they just left it at the top of the stairs there for a week. And then when the anthem came out, or they just randomly felt like it in the middle of the game, they'd pull it down over it, covered all of the seating, they'd be jumping up and down underneath it. And obviously health and safety wasn't high on the Polish authorities list, that they just allowed them to have this bloody massive flag. But again, it's things like that you see and you experience, so you just go, wow, this is wild. I remember when I was in Istanbul for the World Cup, doing Slovenia against USA, and I had to take my headphones off for the national anthem, because Slovenia at that point couldn't have been a country for very long. I can't remember how many years they'd been an independent country, and they were playing America, and there was about 12,000 Slovenians in the building, all in green. And it's like there's something magical about a recently independent country singing their national anthem. They sing it with a little more vim and vigor than the rest of us who've been independent for a long time, and just spine tingling moments like that you just go, wow, what a privilege to be here and just witness that. It just, as I say, it's just an absolute
You see
privilege.
those people where they ask in, like, say, Jokic, like, oh, you used to, you intimidated by the Miami
the
fans,
crowd.
and he's like, dude, I played in Slovenia. Like, what are you talking about? Like, just,
Yeah. Well, the best atmosphere I ever covered in this country was London Towers, Crystal Palace, which I'm sure most people would find hard to believe, but Žalgiris were playing, and literally there might have been 40 or 50 London Towers fans in the whole building. Everything else was just crazy Lithuanians going mad. And the Towers come running out before the game. They're getting boos and whistles and what. It's just absolutely raucous atmosphere. And that's the sort of, as you say, when you go to Serbia or Lithuania or some of these Greece, some of these other countries where it is football style supporting, which I don't think we could naturally ever transition that over to the British basketball audience, but we could maybe get a slither of it.
We take the drum.
Yeah, we'll take the drum. A couple of horns. Yeah, bring it out.
Yeah.
Take us through what game day is like for those who, because a lot of people, we've touched on it with some of the other interviews. Most people with basketball see the end result. They see the 48 minutes. Thanks very much. Off you go.
Did you say 4 hours before you're there?
Well, it depends. Partly depends on where I'm going. If I'm going somewhere far, I'd like to get there a little earlier, because that A1M on a Friday going to Newcastle can be a bloody nightmare for starters. And you don't want to be late in this role. So yeah, it would be at least 2 hours. Again, this year with it all being done out of Ealing, it was 2 hours beforehand was plenty, because it was relatively straightforward in terms of what you're going to do and how you're going to go through it all, and the running orders were relatively similar. But to sort of answer the question that you asked, so I will have done preparation beforehand. So I'll have all of my stuff ready, and I'll know what the key lines and key thinking. Again, with the British Basketball League, because I'm so ingrained in it, some of that is just, I already know that. I don't need to prepare for what this game means if they win and they lose and blah, blah, blah. And then you'll normally have some sort of production meeting a couple of hours beforehand where they talk through what's going to happen, the running order. So like this year, you'd come in, hello and welcome, into the starting five graphic or whatever, and then we're going to have 2 ones to watch, then throw to a break, and then whatever the running order is. Because I've been this gig for so long, there's not too many ways you can slice it up that I haven't seen before, and some things are very formulaic. Like if you do the EuroLeague, Euro Cup games, I've actually got a Word document that I have a template for the EuroLeague games, because I know basically you've got a 15-minute thing, and I'll just write in some notes of this is what I'm gonna, because the first bit is going to be the outside of the arena, and then it's going to be 20 seconds of the arrival of the away team and 20 seconds of the arrival of the home team. Then it's going to be into the arena with the locator graphic. Then it's going to be shots of the crowd. Then it's going to be one to watch, and you just
kind of writes itself, doesn't it?
You sort of know, okay, so, and all they do is they tell you, right, first one to watch is this one, second one to watch is that one, head to head is this, and you sort of, so you can script it out. I mean, it's not, I don't read it verbatim, but I've got a rough idea of what I'm going to say and when, and it sort of flows through. And FIBA is exactly the same. You do the international games, there's a 10-minute running order, and I could probably reel that off the top of my head because I've done that many of them. So you kind of know what it is. And I guess the other thing is, over the years I've worked with a studio, without a studio, me in front of the camera saying hello and welcome, me doing the pre-game, post-game interviews, somebody else doing it. So I've sort of covered everything there is to cover, and it's sort of, you could almost drop me in with 1 minute's notice and I'd know how to navigate my way through it.
Do you prefer one?
That's just
prefer
experience,
one
isn't
over
it?
the other, yeah.
No, I'd much rather have time and space to think about things, and let's go through and know exactly what it is that's coming.
In terms of format, I mean, you mentioned obviously going down to Ealing. Is there a difference between, say, being on site to being in a studio to being what would be different for you?
I would say there's not as big a difference as people think there is, and there's also
that's being live and watching it on TV.
So in essence, this year, because they centralised all the commentary, the commentary was done out of a commentary booth in Ealing, and the cameras were, and the direction was in Ealing as well. But obviously the cameras are on site and feeds everything back. Versus how I'd done it on Sky beforehand, we would go to the game and you'd be sat on the table or on the gantry or wherever to do the commentary. So it's slightly different doing it off tube. Obviously all the European games, the EuroLeague, Eurocup games are done off tube at Stockley Park. And so I've been doing it for years and years. In fact, probably 20 years I did my first, what we would call off tube commentary. So it's not a massive deal to me, but what you've got to be able to do is work out what's going on that you can't see. And a lot of that is about how well you know the game. And again, when I watch European commentaries, I can tell the people who really understand the game and can work out, well, the whistle came from over there, even though it wasn't on camera as to what I could see. I know what it could be and I know what it couldn't be. So therefore I'm going to go with, it's probably a foul in the low post, it's probably a moving screen. And then when I see the replay, I know it's a moving screen because...
But you need that experience that you've had for
exactly.
30 years to be able to do that.
If you do a lot of it, you just sort of know, well, there's only so many things that could cause a whistle to be blown over there, sort of thing. And so it does require a different level of skill doing it off tube, because you have to, you're limited by what you can see, versus if you're sat courtside, I don't have to see what you're seeing. I can look anywhere. And the challenges were in the early days of it is people getting technicals that you couldn't see out of shot, and you're going, who's that technical on? I think they've called a technical, and all of that sort of thing. But they improved the facilities for us as it went on, so that became easier to do. There is no substitute for being sat, in my personal view, there's no substitute for being sat on the table in the middle, because you can see everything that's going on. You get a sense of the coaches and the teams, and you can, there's a feel for the game that you don't get off tube. And I don't think you even get, if sometimes in the past I've been doing commentary on the gantry up where the cameras are, so you're further back. I don't think you get the feel up there that you get sat on the sidelines in the thick of it. So that's always my preference, but I don't think it's as big a deal as some people do, that we haven't always been there. And I think it requires good commentary and good direction, but I think you can get pretty close to the same level.
Do you have access in terms of the video? Obviously they have sometimes multiple camera feeds. Do you have access to all of those, or seeing those?
No. So basically we will get, what we will get is the off tube. So basically what's visible, and then a fixed camera one. Okay. So we will always see the main camera. And what that allows is, if they're showing a close up here and a whistle goes, I can see on camera one what the whistle was for. So more often than not, if they go to a close up, I'm looking at camera one, because I'm not interested in the close up. The person at home is interested in the close up. I'm interested in what's happening, so that I don't miss anything.
Yeah, it's those subtleties, like you said, when if you're a courtside, you just see something, the way someone's dropping themselves as a player, and the way someone's talking to someone. You can't necessarily perceive that, can you?
Also, you can get a little thing, like a look. Like maybe I've sat games before, and like a whistle will go, and one ref will just give another ref a look, and you were like, "Ooh, he's not convinced by that." Just little subtle things.
One blows the whistle, and the other one's like sitting on it, and he's looking at him like, "Did you mean to
not
blow that?"
You would highlight that, but it's just from watching the game, you'd pick up on stuff like that.
But also, like the coaches, you can get a real sense of, oh, something's happened here, because you can turn and look and see, and and as I say, and the players, because you can often hear or sense, oh, there's some chatter going off here that may not come up on the pictures, but I can see, oh, he's them two keep going at each, them two keep talking, and those are the things that you might not pick up on.
Can you prepare for that? Because normally when you see like a big T or something coming up, you can normally go back 2 or 3 plays and go, right, there's a little knock, it's coming back. So what some of the things that I've heard sometimes with commentating, which I love it, it's like they'll prepare. There's been a hit there, you can see he's got frustration. Let's see if that continues on, and then you get another knock. Then 3 plays later, T, and it might square up. And then the camera goes off and goes on to someone in the crowd.
It's analysing, isn't it? It's post-play analysis. And you look at
and there are some players that you just know, oh, hang on, he's on the edge here. And there's some of them who never get flustered, but there's some of them it's building. You've got to keep an eye on there. Because
what their teams was there a very specific, in that tenure. Can you think of a team or where that you thought, every time I'm commentating them, I know this is going to be a spicy game, so to speak, across those eras? Because obviously the game has changed so much across the eras itself.
Yeah, it was more physical game back in the 80s and early 90s. They've sort of legislated some of that out, so it was probably then. I mean, Leopards against Towers was always the one that you think of where they actually didn't like each other. They actually had people on either side who would wind each other up. So before you even got there, you knew, and the owners, were always trying to score points over each other. So if it comes all the way from the top, then that was always a good one. Leicester against Milton Keynes was always spicy as well, because they used to play each other in the trophy group stages, so they played each other a lot. There was a lot of players who went back and forth from one team to the other. You had Vince there, and Vince is always good value for whipping up a manufactured storm sort of thing. So there was often things like that. I'm trying to think.
A manufactured storm, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. Worthing, Thames Valley never much liked each other back in the day. So it was always those things. Generally, it's when 2 teams were very good. That's where the rivalry. Leicester, Newcastle for years, because they were the number 1 and number 2 in the league in whichever order, and therefore when they played each other, the games mattered more, because you couldn't afford to lose to the team that's going to beat you to the league title if you don't beat them.
Dan, you said that one of the greatest games you've ever seen was at London Towers, and in Europe. What's the greatest player you've ever seen live?
Player live. The most dominant I can recall anybody ever being that I did regularly was Kevin Durant in the 2010 World Cup in Istanbul. I'd never quite seen anything like it. It was like he made the other NBA players look like just ordinary dudes on the court. And it was like, he would just basically come out, hit points in the first quarter, they'd be still by 2. But they hated that whole tournament. And it was one of those things where I just went, this guy is, and I think he'd only played 1 year in the NBA at the time. I think he'd had his rookie year, and he'd led the league in scoring, or he was second in scoring or something like that. And I couldn't remember seeing a player make really good players just look ordinary. And he was just so smooth and casual with it all.
And that's got to say something, because when you're looking at a squad where you've got LeBron, Kobe Bryant, Carmelo Anthony in it, and he's making them look average, that's saying
I don't
something.
think all of them, I'm trying to think who was on that team. I don't think all of them were on that team. I tell you, the one guy I do remember being on that team was Steph Curry on that team. I think Steph was on that team, but it was before he was Steph, if you like. I remember Kevin Love.
Steph.
I remember Kevin Love being on that team, and Kevin Love was 12th man off the bench, and he would come on, and I was like, this guy looks like a scrub. but he would end up with 10 points and 10 rebounds in about 4 minutes. But he just looked so out of place. And then he went on to have, I think he was still in college that year. I can't remember. Maybe
he was the Christian.
And then
Laettner.
he went on. Yeah, he went on and had like this unbelievable career. And I was like, wow, he was better than he looked in Istanbul.
Kevin Love, rebound leader for the 2012 Summer Olympic USA team. Yeah.
So, but in 2012, in 2010 in Istanbul, he was last man off the bench. He was getting scrubbed.
So 2010, that would have been what, the third? I'm thinking that would have been third or fourth.
Sorry,
year.
Carmelo Anthony. He was in 2008. LeBron was in it. James Harden, Blake Griffin, Eric Gordon, Rudy Gay, Anthony Davis, Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade, Dwight Howard.
Yeah. All right.
Some big players.
All right. They'll do. I mean, those. What's your take? Just at the moment, Boston Celtics have just claimed the World Championship.
The World Championship.
What's your take?
World champions of what? The United States.
Yeah, what's your take on that? Because I love the fact that FIBA immediately someone jumps on the bandwagon. They're like. It'll be Germany or someone else, or just whoever it was that year. Every time it comes around the NBA, it's like, no, these are the world champions.
I like the fact that you see these memes of like the world globe, and it says when Americans say they're world champions, and it does like a color of America, like world, and everyone else is a different color.
It's not, is it?
It's marketing, isn't it? This goes back to the World Series and all of that. Somebody at some point marketed it, and we were the best. Look, the reality is that it's the best players in the world, broadly, play in the NBA. So they would be anybody, I should imagine, over a 7-game series, and so I understand why they feel able to defend what nobody else would do. But the other thing is cultural, is the Americans don't really think outside of their own borders, because it's a big country and none of them have passports, so they don't need a passport because they don't need to go anywhere. Everything they need is in their own country, so they're not as worldly as say us Europeans, and I say that with a lot of Americans in my family, so I'm not it just is what it is, and it's one of those where I don't get too irate with it. It does make me chuckle when they do it, but I guess their point is that when they're I've gone very dark. I know you're not doing the video thing. When their baseball teams win, they're world champions because nobody would beat them. When the American football teams win, they're world champions because nobody would beat them. And their basketball, they think the same as well. And it doesn't rile me in the way it does other people.
Well, I always think it's interesting going in with when you have an Olympic year. That's when I always think it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because then you say, well, these are world champions, and you go.
Yeah.
Well,
time to prove it.
And Boston, it's funny because Boston are one of those few teams you go, they haven't got too many imports in that respect. I mean, you got Zingas the Dingus, but other than that, they're kind of sound.
Well, let's see how they do. It's coming up.
But they're just sending a super team over, aren't they? To go silly.
An old super team, and Jaylen Brown has just won MVP, and it's the first time a non-European or someone outside of America has won it in like 5 years. So my last question, I know Mark's got his stitch-up questions, is what I call them. My last question for you, Dan, is there a favourite thing you've said in your 30-year career? Do you know, like, the classic one would be "Take a boo, son." You know, when Steven Gerrard hit that shot. Have you said anything and you've listened back and gone, that was good?
The two that get played all the time, and I, funnily enough, saw it today. I think Sheffield put it on their social media today. Is Myers to win the league in 1999, and Terrell Myers hit the last shot of the season to win the league title, and then we last year still, or is it 2 years ago now? The trophy final that Caledonia won, Sloan in the corner for the win. They're the two that instantly come back, and people remember and they resonate because of the moments. And the reality is, commentary is about moments, isn't it? It's one of those things where your job is to enhance and not take away from the moment and not mess it up. And I think it's more of a challenge these days because with social media, sport gets played out in clips now, so therefore you need to make every clip sound really good, and that's different to when I started in the pre-internet days. In the old, we used to fax the clips to
Not
each
pigeon,
other.
not pigeons. You didn't like put it in a
Not
little pigeon and fly it up.
We moved on to fax.
Wow.
So yeah, those are the two. But actually, it doesn't. Those are the two that resonate because of the magnitude of the two moments that they are. But even in a sort of mid-season game between two mid-table teams, if you get that dramatic moment and you nail it, that's the sort of buzz of the game, isn't it?
And it also builds a rapport, I guess, with the BBL and your voice and the team and your voice, because when they play that back all the time, you hear for the win. Yeah. Like, and and that's how legends like yourself are made.
Well, you just got to be old, don't you? You just got to be around for a long time, and then suddenly all the highlights are your voice. But yeah.
Well, Dan, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the highs, a lot of the lows, a lot of the challenges we've had in the UK, certainly with looking at development, the British team itself, getting something recognised more on an international platform and everything. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, bringing it back to home in the BBL currently. And there's definitely some changes and things that are going on. And we, Paul and I are really conscious about being very positive about basketball and wanting to talk about the positivity and how many people want everything to succeed. But there have been some issues with like communication from the leagues and things and what's going on, and people just don't really understand. Obviously, you have some things you can talk about, but how?
It's like the communication's centralised, and there'll be one statement, and everyone just puts out that blanket statement and just changes the team name.
And people just don't know,
and it's like we're going to stay silent. No one say anything.
So I guess it's the challenge. The challenge for the clubs is whatever happens, you're going to need clubs next year. That therein is the thing. Whether the current guys of the British Basketball League survives through the summer or not, or some sort of phoenix from the ashes appears in its stead. And I'm reasonably confident from everything I've read and been told that there will be something in September. I'm not 100% sure what that might look like. So my reading of that, all the clubs putting out the same press release, was written very carefully with a nod to lawyers who were very specific on wording, and therefore they didn't want to do anything that would put their ability to be part of whatever the new setup is or the existing setup is in September.
And that's how it reads. That's how it reads.
But if you're faced with the, I again, speculation, but if you're faced with potential litigation, if you
allegedly,
allegedly, the wrong one way or the other, then you would be careful with it, because again, as much as we talk about the sustainability of most of the clubs in the league, it doesn't take much to put that at risk, and that there is the challenge, that the tightrope I assume they are currently having to walk. But my sense of it feels like we're very deep into the end game now, and whatever is going to be will be relatively soon, just because practicalities it would have to be. And again, everything you read about the challenges that 777 as an organization are facing all over the world suggests that they're not going to be able to continue spinning the plates for much longer unless something happens that allows them to carry on spinning the plates, which doesn't look very likely, but we'll see. So I kind of get it from both sides. I would imagine as clubs, in fact, I don't imagine, I know as clubs that they have been working on this for a period of time, but none of it is shared with regular punters like us as to what's going on. And I get that, but I also get the frustration with what the hell is going on. Is my team going to be playing? You're asking me to buy a season ticket, and I'm reading about this league having their license revoked by the governing body. So what does that mean? Why should I pay 200 quid or 300 quid, whatever a season ticket costs, when I don't know what the hell is going on? So I get both sides of the argument, and I don't know that I know what the solution is, but my sense of it is, if I was spending £300 on a season ticket, I'd want to be relatively sure that I was going to get the value out of that, get my tickets out of that next year. And my sense of it is that I think I probably will. I think London is a challenge, you know, given everything that you read, and you know their finances that we've seen. They're in the biggest of the 10 teams. I would say they've got the biggest challenge to navigate their way to September. But if I was in Sheffield or Caledonia or Newcastle, I think I'd buy a season ticket.
It was one of those season ticket things. It was on social media, and I wish I'd have taken a screenshot. But someone had put like, you know, buy the season tickets are open now. And then someone had just put what season with a question mark. Mm-hmm. And you go, that's basically it. I laughed so hard because
there's going to be a season.
Yes, there is. And like, it's like, I won't say like the dirty laundry. No one wants to put on a suit until it's been cleaned.
But the reality is, I might feel like that, but I totally understand somebody else going, I'm not paying it. I'm not paying it till I know what's happening next year. And for clubs, that's obviously going to be a challenge because you know, clubs are used to generating money in the summer through season ticket sales, and so you know, it is a very difficult balance for them financially to work its way through, and or how it resolves itself. I just feel like we've been rumbling towards this for a very long time, and whatever this is, we're very close to it now.
It is that whole retrospective where people are finding out, oh, by the way, last year the league almost didn't start because there was all these things going on, and people are only finding out about these things sort of now, and things that were happening, and then something else gets put in the press and you go, that's not necessarily true because it was this and this.
The one thing I would say is I've read some stuff that I know to be true, to be true, and I've read some stuff that I know not to be true, but they may even have been in the same article, and this therein is it goes back to your point of in the vacuum of any knowledge, how does anybody know what is or isn't true, and therefore will believe everything that's put out, not all of which is necessarily the case, or it's been framed in a way to make it look like one thing that it wasn't, because you know, I've seen things that have been written down that, as I say, I know didn't happen. So
not much is put out though, is it?
No, I'm talking about not officially put out by people.
And that's the thing, if you don't give information to people, and it doesn't have to be much information, it just has to be simply like, hey, look, we've closed the doors. When the BBF actually sort of announced we're cutting the license in particular. That's the one that a lot of people are referencing.
Yeah.
And they said that license is now gone.
I'm sure I saw
There should have been something saying, see you back.
Sky Sports News, we ever got on there? Maybe. Very, very briefly. But they talk about darts more than more than that. But there isn't enough media, I don't think.
British basketball has bemoaned its lack of media coverage over the years and the decades. But there are actually times where it's helped them
avoid scandal.
Yes, avoid things that
they don't have to speak. Yeah. I mean, we've learned our lesson, you know, and which is why we say the word allegedly a lot. That's kind of your way out. And it's I've said this many times. I believe it was Elton John who said, "It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, as long as they spell your name right. That's all that matters."
Yeah.
And I really believe that. Some of the stuff that I do sometimes with the Portsmouth Force National League Div 3, we do more social media than BBL clubs. And you look at it and think, man, come on. And I think there should be more talking, especially even it's just the clubs.
All it needs, sounds silly, easy sweeping statement, all it needs.
Someone like Dan talking.
Just,
like
it's
for each club, if you know what I mean.
It's this exposure to, let's say, the great unwashed of the whole UK, for example. Imagine if you had 7 seconds that everyone could see. Hey, by the way, do you all realise that there's local basketball clubs, there's local places you can go, there's local things you can do, and all of this. And if everyone had a one thing, and it, you know, you can look at, is this Basketball England or Wales BBF or whatever. You know, it's always easy to point fingers, and like you said, money doesn't solve everything. But it just seems a shame where there's so many people who want it to succeed.
Yeah,
and there's an audience there.
Yeah, I agree with the premise of the disconnect. I think that was ever thus, certainly in basketball, the disconnect between, you know, different people who seemingly want the same thing, but they only want it in their way, in their corner, and whatever. And we see it in the big cities where you got, you know, a multitude of people doing very similar things, but doing them competitively rather than collaboratively. I don't know what the solution to any of that is, and I like the idea of having, you know, a single voice. The interesting thing is that the single voice and the people who have acted in a way are the same people who basically did nothing for the last couple of years in response to our various different failures at the national team level, whether that's not fielding teams, whether that's poor performances at Eurobasket, whether that's the issue with having an interim coach seemingly forever, and blah 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 blah. So, you know, I don't know. There's no easy solution to any of it. I'm going with this. It is frustrating because being old as you can remember Portsmouth and their great team that lost 3 finals in the same season. And won the league.
Yeah. Okay. We'll rest on that one. Yeah, rest on that one.
But you can also remember people making mistakes that you see repeated, or not learning lessons from things that worked previously or didn't work previously. And you know, I don't know. I'm a mere commentator. If I had all the answers, then I'd be
a mere commentator, Mark.
Mere commentator.
No
way. No. Remove the mere word.
Well, listen. If NBC become that they you know, TNT lost out with the NBA rights, so all of a sudden they're going to sweep up the BBL rights, and they're going to have Dan there as the man doing all of this. You go, great. Okay, there's the investment. Tick, done.
Here we go.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Right, come on, Mark. Ask your questions.
Let's do it. So, Dan, you know, the pinnacle of your life surely is answering these questions now.
It's all building to this moment.
It has. Just every fibre in your body now. Who is that one person to take that clutch shot? The golden goose who's going to secure the bag and win that championship. Who is it?
To shoot for humanity.
To shoot for humanity.
No, we can't do that because that's Space Jam.
Oh, right. Not shooting for humanity. Shooting for all animals.
Yeah, for whichever bit it is. To be honest with you, I don't know if it's recency bias, but the fact that I was just talking about Kevin Durant in that
Nice.
World Championship in Turkey in 20 whatever it was. Is it 2010 or 2011? No, I can't remember. I would have taken him, to be honest with you. That if I was trying to win something, that would be the thing. But that I can't really go outside of the British Basketball League. Well, I could go logic and say if I've got one shot, wouldn't I give it to Ian McKinney or Depeche, because they had the highest 3-point shooting history. You know what? The answer I always give on this, people go, "Who's your favourite player?" And I go back to, let's go back to the 80s. I go back to Gene Waldron, because Gene was the player of my childhood. So I grew up watching Gene Waldron, and he is my stock answer. And he was a clutch shooter as well. So I'm going to give it to Gene. Gene over
Gene.
KD. I
Big
want
Gene.
Gene
Wow.
this, so that he knows I picked him over KD.
It's a good job we're not doing that, because we'd have done Alan Cunningham, but obviously he was
Oh,
next
yeah,
home. He was next Globetrotter, so obviously not a favourite of yours, Dan. So, so who's your Five and Pine? Who's that team
To save the world.
to save the world
Save
again?
the world. Save the world in a British Basketball League context.
Sure,
No.
you can do whatever
British
context you
basketball
like.
or worldwide, whatever. Any player.
Euroball,
all time.
APAC. You put anyone in you like.
Just people you know from a podcast.
You can have your neighbour Terry if you like.
Two. David next door does have a basket on his thing. I don't think I've ever seen him shoot on it. I don't know now. I can't open it up to worldwide.
You can do whoever you want.
Ever seen.
You can do whoever you want.
Well,
You can literally do whoever you want. And incidentally, you just mentioned your neighbour. Can you imagine if you had a neighbour and he was shooting, and as soon as Dan went, I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm not shooting now," because you're going to start commentating for, "Oh, he's bricked that one again."
I don't think I can go global. I think that's too big a pool. So I'm just going to stick to British Basketball League players, and I'm going to just randomly throw out 6 players for you. And if you ask me this question in a week's time, I'll probably come up with a different.
I'm
players.
literally. I've put a note in my calendar because you mentioned earlier. I don't know if I could do this. I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to message you and see if it stays.
So I'm going to pick Alton Bird. Just for unbelievable legacy. He kind of gets lost in the 1987 arbitrary line, but his career from the late 70s, again all the way through my childhood, was just unrivaled in this country. So I think any list that doesn't include Alton somewhere in it is probably missing something. So I'm going to pick, yeah.
Dan, can I ask you? You just mentioned the 1987, that sort of like invisible line, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is that they agreed? Was it just something that was agreed, or because I look at the history is always difficult to see in British basketball sometimes.
So okay, 2-minute version. So obviously, league basketball started in 1972 with the National League and the 6 teams that were in it, and was run by the EBBA, England Basketball Association, 2 Bs. And then in the mid 80s, they obviously had a big league up in Scotland as well, with Livingston and Falkirk and those sorts of teams. And they used to play the Anglo-Scottish / British Masters, which was essentially the forerunner of the BBL trophy, between those clubs. And then the clubs in the top division in England were not very happy with how the league was being run by the governing body, so decided to form their own league, and in doing so brought in some Scottish teams as well, Livingston and Glasgow Rangers, to form the British Basketball League. So the 1987 line was the start of the British League. So before that, it was obviously separate English and Scottish, and obviously they still exist, the Scottish League and the lower tiers, or the old Division 1. But so in essence, that was the line. And the reason why most things statistically are counted from 1987 is because we've not done a very good job of keeping our history from before 1987. So people like me have various different spreadsheets and whatever salvage from floppy disks and Lotus 1, 2, 3. But there isn't an entire record of it all the way through. So it's just in part easier to do the history from 1987 than it is from 1972. And God help you if you want to go back before that. But if you go to the University of Worcester, to the Basketball Heritage Centre, you can find John Atkinson's life work in there, and you can trawl through it and learn an incredible amount. We as a sport owe John a great debt for what he did in terms of saving the history of, or maintaining the history of the sport. So that's basically the 1987 line. But I know how many trophies Alton Bird won because I've got it. But it's not easily accessible unless you have access to my computer.
How many?
How many? I believe it's 28 or 29 trophies. I can't remember because he obviously spent some time in Scotland and won some trophies up there. And he won 4 MVPs, 2 before the BBL and 2 after the BBL. So yeah, pretty good.
That's a few trophies, isn't it?
Yeah,
he's done all right.
He's done all right.
Not bad.
Wow.
Arguably a lot of them were pre-NBA.
And the other about, and you take somebody else.
5 Minnesota.
One cup that they won in Sunderland, though. I don't know. I'm going to pick Steve Bucknell because we just mentioned the Lakers. He's just come into my head, Steve Bucknell. But incredible player, obviously played in the NBA. The greatest transfer in the history of sport from the LA Lakers to Sunderland. That'll never be beaten. So what a player!
How did they sell that?
And obviously, again in the 90s, incredible player both for London and England as well. So randomly picked Steve Bucknell. Who else am I going to pick? Let's have Tony Dorsey. Tony Dorsey, again, two-time MVP. Played obviously for Birmingham, for Manchester. Came back to Guildford as well. Incredible player of his time. Tremendous scorer. Really hard to guard. So I'll put him in. How many have I got now? 3.
Yeah.
3. Probably need some size, don't I?
Spanning the ears here. I like
I need something a bit more modern as well. Who am I going to have from? Yeah, you see, I'm sort of tempted to go modern era, Ramon Fletcher, but then do I want Ramon Fletcher and Alton Bird on the same team? I don't know.
I love it when people are just sitting there thinking.
My problem is
it sounds like a simple question, but it gets deeper and deeper.
I end up skewing old, and I go back to the 90s and early 2000s just because that was the era I grew up on, and it's easy to say, oh, it's much better in my day. Okay, let's go Charles Smith as somebody relatively recently. Oh, and Drew Sullivan as well. Can't not have Drew Sullivan in. I don't know how I've got this far. Apologies to Drew Sullivan. Drew Sullivan was one of the best players I've ever seen in terms of his ability to win a game through any means, whether it's a rebound, a block, a steal, a basket, a free throw, or whatever. Drew Sullivan, just unbelievably good, and in at the front end of Newcastle's dominance, Leicester's dominance, and the little hiatus in Mersey in between. And then obviously Charles Smith, just one of the greatest scorers the league has ever seen. So I'll put those two in. Not perfectly balanced, my team, is it? Not really. We're a bit 5 out.
It's your team.
Maybe if we small ball Dorsey at 5, could I get away with that? I don't know. How many have I given you now?
You've done 5.
Five.
Who's on the bench?
Who's riding that
Who's
pine?
riding the pine? I'm going to put Gene in again because I can't believe I've left Gene out. Again, he suffers a little bit with the 1987 line.
Gene Waldron.
Gene Waldron. I'm going to put Gene Waldron in just because he's Gene. He's my mate. And you said I could have my mate in the team. I'm going to pick my mate, Gene.
Not Dave next door.
No, he's a bit better than Dave.
He's been
next
cut.
door, yeah.
He's been
He's
cut.
cut.
Yeah.
Get
Sorry,
out.
David.
So, as a commentator, who are you going to put in the greatest commentator to commentate this team to save the world? Who's that going to be?
Well, I can't do it myself.
Yeah, you can do it yourself if you want. We've had people pick themselves before.
I sort of want to do it. No, the commentator I always really admired growing up was Marv Albert. So I suppose if I was picking
See, that's who I thought Paul would pick.
Marv Albert, and then my favorite color commentator in any sport anywhere, John Madden. I know he doesn't do basketball, but just his ability to break down an unbelievably complex game into simple layman talk, and to see everything that's going on in the carnage that is the NFL. Yeah, let's put Madden on just because. Why not?
There you go.
Nice. What's your, when you mentioned just breaking it down quick, what's your take on LeBron and JJ when they do their breakdowns on their podcast?
I think it's fast. I'm really intrigued to see this at the end of the podcast now. It's surely they can't carry it on, can they? I don't know.
Well, as coach and player,
surely that can't happen. Surely.
Oh.
I think that would be even more exciting. Imagine a player and a coach having a podcast talking about the games. That would be
They should have
wild.
a TV show.
That would be wild. No, I think anything that gives you insight into the game is really good, and they're obviously two incredible minds when it comes to the game, and you don't always get that. It's not a guarantee just because you play the game really well that you can understand and break it down really well. So, but yeah, I'm more intrigued as to whether it continues.
There's a hilarious meme that they put out just where it was from someone on one of the newsletters or whatever. They put like his credentials as coaching, and one was like JJ Redick's credentials was coaching some boys' school or something.
No,
and then the next one was then the LA Lakers, and you go, yeah, he was 15 years tenured in as a player, and he's got a great mind for it.
And he's got a great
just the way they did
mind.
it. It's like you've done him dirty there. That's a bit unfair.
Who is this?
But it is
FS1.
like you wouldn't become a CEO just because you worked at a company. It is an interesting. It'll either be.
Ty Lue did seem to do all right out of it.
It'll be spectacular, whether that's positive or negative. I think it'll be spectacular.
This sport channel did him harshly here. So here's a picture of JJ Redick, and it says JJ Redick's career head coaching. First of all, the Brooklyn Basketball Academy in 2023 to 2024, volunteer 4th grade boys head coach. Los Angeles Lakers 2024 to 25 head coach. I mean,
they've done him dirty.
They've done him dirty, but they're a comic genius at the same time. Again,
the reality
it's got us all talking.
There are some people that you just know they're going to be a good coach. You can just tell.
Yeah.
There are some people, and I obviously don't know him, but he comes across as somebody who probably has that within him, and you would like to assume that the talent evaluators at the Lakers would be a better judge than you or I.
Well, Paul was saying, like, on one of his podcasts, he was like, yeah, he called LeBron out on a few things. And you go, with respect, you go, it's JJ Redick and it's LeBron. Which one's had the tenured career?
Yeah.
Probably not you, JJ.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
But
You know, in high school, he was like the man.
Yeah.
And then it was like he was just a role player.
You see these
Great
people
mind,
who've
but
got
role player.
great basketball minds. Great basketball minds. Just listen to them talk for 20 minutes or something like that, and you can hear they got great basketball. And
Well,
he's one of them. I think Mark Stoutel, same thing for him.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with him, and he talks on so many different levels when he's talking about his coaching. And people like that, I just look at and go. I said to you a few seasons ago, they'll be in the NBA.
Well, Joe,
JJ Redick now, Lakers.
Joe
Stootle, maybe 5 years' time. What do you reckon, Dan?
Joe
I'm going to write
McBride,
that
Joe
down
McBride.
now. Can I get on the bookies? That sounds like a...
Oh yeah, he'll be there. I'm sure of it. If he wants to, he'll go there. But
It's people who throw themselves, their life.
Who did
is all
Boston's
it is,
coach?
isn't it?
Look at where he did. He was a player in college, but did a bit, but that was it. Went into the coaching level. And who did he have sat on the sidelines? Was it Pepe?
Yeah. The reality is that, being a great player doesn't necessarily translate. But actually, I mean, you look at Mourinho. Was he a second division goalkeeper or something? Ferguson got injured, so I don't think that quite. But Guardiola did play for Barcelona, to be fair. But it doesn't always compute that, great players become great coaches.
Wow. Maybe, what about commentators to coaches, Paul? Have you ever heard any of those doing that?
Yeah, Pat Riley.
Pat Riley. Yeah.
There we
Exactly.
go. Pat Riley.
Could it be Dan
No,
Routledge?
I don't think it will. I don't.
You never know.
Too
Look,
long in the tooth now.
London Lions, they might come calling this season and say, look, do you want to step up to assistant coach and see how you get on?
We'll see. I'll take the call, but I'm not making any promises.
Well, I mean, it goes without saying, thank you so much for being on the show, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure. And goes out at the moment, if you haven't listened, Mark.
I have been Paul, and we have been talking to the voice of British basketball, Dan Routledge. Dan, thank you for gracing us with your presence on the podcast. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.